Welcome back to the fourth week's lectures of Better Leader, Richer Life. In this segment, I'm going to talk about how to chart your course through your dialogues. The assignment for this week asks you to think through your approach to each of your dialogues, and Chapter 5 of the Total Leadership book has a number of tips for planning them. I'll offer the main points here, and if you have the book, you'll find more detailed guidance there, and in other resources we'll make available on our resources page. The assignments you did last week were based on your view of things. Of course, your perceptions might be inaccurate. So the first thing in charting your course is to keep in mind that the primary purpose of these conversations is to confirm or perhaps correct your current understanding of stakeholder expectations. Anything more, like negotiating new expectations or discussing innovative ways to meet them, is a bonus. So if you do nothing more than simply clarify your mutual expectations, what you need from each other, then you will have achieved a lot. Also, give some thought to the medium of communication, the setting and the time. You want to choose a location that makes you both relaxed and that is as free from interruptions as you can possibly make it. A neutral location is good if you can find one, and try to allow ample time. Of course, the medium need not be face-to-face, although that's often best. Use the medium that'll work best for them. You want this to be a positive experience for them. And try to weave in some of the things you wrote about in the first part of our course, especially your leadership vision, the story of your future. So think ahead about how you can talk about your vision in such a way as to inspire your stakeholders so that they see that what you're trying to achieve is good for them as well as for you. But as throughout our course, you don't have to reveal anything to others that you'd rather keep private. You have full control over what you choose to let others know. And finally, remember that each relationship is different, and each person will react in a unique way to the opportunity for a dialogue with you. And indeed, that's another part of the purpose of this whole course, to get you to be more skillful in connecting with all the different people who matter to you through practice. These are important considerations as you're planning your dialogues. Now, let me offer some additional tips. People have asked me, what's a good number of stakeholder dialogues to have? If you've listed 20 people in your stakeholder list, I do not expect that you'll be able to speak with all of them in the next week. Of course not. Again, aim for 10 dialogues at the high end and a good minimum target of 6, 2 per domain other than you. No need to talk to yourself. It's most useful for you to get the perspective from different domains, not just one part, but all the different pieces. Another important point to keep in mind is to express appreciation for your stakeholders directly to them, and don't hold back in your praise and gratitude. They're doing something to help you, so recognize them for that. I encourage you to tell them that you think of them as important to your future and that you want to talk to them about strengthening that future relationship. Thank them for taking the time to speak to you about topics that they might not have prepared for or that they might feel a little uncomfortable talking about. Let them know that you're doing this because you care about them, and tell them specifically how you hope they'll benefit from this conversation. You might say, I hope that I'll have a better understanding of what you need from me so that I can be a better son, friend, colleague, whatever it is, and that you'll be more aware of what matters to me. Emphasize that this is about us. It's not about me. And for people with whom you're speaking face-to-face, you might try to make it a special occasion, even in a small way, by choosing a location or a time and place that would be distinctive. You might just go out for a meal, have tea or coffee, or do something to take you both away from your normal routines. And treat the stakeholder dialogues as a continuous process, which could be the most important outcome. This isn't a do it once and get it done with kind of exercise. Indeed, you may find after speaking with one person that another emerges as someone you now realize should be a key stakeholder in your life. So feel free to go speak with that person later. You may also find that a stakeholder dialogue has surfaced certain topics that merit more discussion. Treat all of this activity as a work in progress, just as your development as a leader is a work in progress that is lifelong. Of course, there's a point in time during which you get these exercises done for our course, and that time ends. But my hope is that doing these dialogues stimulates further insight on these issues, on how you are with the people who matter most to you now and in the future. It'll be most useful if you return to the things that you wrote about your stakeholders and revise them continually. One important lesson that students take from this course is to continue these dialogues and to make them a regular part of your practice. How to get started? Well, there's no one best way to initiate a stakeholder dialogue. My general rule is this: whatever works well for your stakeholder is the way to go, generally speaking. If you think it will be useful to explain that this is part of a course that you're taking, well then do so. Some people have found that doing this gave them an out in case things didn't go well, which usually doesn't happen, or it just gives them an excuse for even having the conversation in the first place, which in some cases you might need. On the other hand, if it would be best just to try to make it a natural part of your normal, regular conversation with someone, well, that's really ideal, without calling special attention to it as a formal occasion. Well, if that's what works, then do it that way, if you can, and just figure out the right time and place. Again, your aim is to build trust and to have each person come out of the conversation feeling that you understand them better than before. An important aspect of preparing for your dialogues is to anticipate your own anxiety. Indeed, if you don't have some trepidation at this point, then something's amiss. You're probably not thinking about it enough. So one question people have asked me in the past is, what causes stakeholder dialogues to go wrong? It's a good question. Well, when it doesn't go well, it's usually because you're defensive. And defensive from the outset. You go in with an agenda to try to change somebody else's mind. If you go into these conversations thinking that your job here is to try and make someone think differently or feel differently, there's a greater chance of the conversation going awry. In fact, it probably will. Rather, think of yourself as on a discovery mission. Your goal is to understand, not necessarily to agree. It's challenging, but helpful to approach this with a certain degree of scientific detachment, let's call it, and to not take anything too personally. But one of the hardest things about leadership, I've found, is to do this, to take the view of another seeing you, the leadership leap. But if you show genuine care, concern, and curiosity about what they care about, you maximize your chances of the dialogues going well. I urge you to approach these dialogues with a spirit of inquiry. Seek to understand. That is the most valuable part of this process. And if you hear something that you disagree with, probe to understand more. Refrain from trying to correct their perceptions. It's best to ask questions. Questions like, can you tell me more about how this affects you? Or, why is this important for you? Or, can you give me an example of how this has affected you in the past? But the main point here is that you're seeking understanding, not revenge for some past experience in which they disappointed or hurt you in some way. I want to look forward. In most cases, stakeholder dialogues turn out better than expected. And many people have found that stakeholders tell them that they expect less of them than they'd anticipated, or they expect something a little different than what they thought going into the conversation. But this certainly isn't always the case, that you end up with less pressure as opposed to more, which is what most people fear. As I said last week, however, it's generally better to know the reality of what people actually expect, even if it's more than what you thought. At least this way you can deal more effectively with that reality, and after all, this is what leaders do. Deal with reality. If you're concerned about imposing on your stakeholders by asking for this time for conversation, well, think about this. If this is a person who's important to you and your future, it's very likely that he or she will feel good about your just letting him or her know that they're important to you. This is indeed leadership in action. You're telling people, you're important to me, and our future matters to me. I want to strengthen it. Chances are, if they are important to you, you're important to them too. People generally find that stakeholders are a lot more willing, even eager, to engage in a dialogue than they had expected. If, however, you still feel that there is a key stakeholder you just can't speak with, or you can't reach them, you might try to speak with someone else within that same group or organization or that part of your life, such as your family. For example, if you can't speak directly with your boss's boss, perhaps speak to another person within your company with whom you work or whom you know through other channels who could give you some information, some of that information that you need that you would have gotten through a direct conversation. Okay, so now that you have a better idea of how to get started, in the next video, I'll talk about how to proceed with your dialogues and achieve your goals for them.